All right, welcome everybody. We are here at the fifth or sixth edition of AppSumo Plus Masterclass. Ayman, he was the CEO with AppSumo for 6 years, starting 2015, and it was very interesting. I mean, Ayman came in to AppSumo. AppSumo at that time was more of like a lifestyle business, if anything. It was very low key. He came in to kind of just maintain it. But Ayman, with the great entrepreneurial mind that he has, saw there was a lot of meat on the bone. And after 1 year of running AppSumo by himself, I think he had maybe a contractor that he had doing some support. He wanted to scale the business and grow it. And I was actually his first hire, and me and him ran AppSumo for a year, 2017, and that's when we kind of almost doubled the business. And then from there, we were given the reins to finally, scale and grow and hire. And, this is what this masterclass is going to be about. Ayman took over when it was at like $3 million in revenue, and obviously took it to about 82 million last year. So we're going to learn what it takes to kind of grow and scale. And very important, Ayman's expertise is in that stage where it's already a viable business and helping it scale. So if you are in the $0 to $500,000 range, there are some takeaways you can get from this, but most of it will be applied more towards scaling. So questions that you submit in the Q&A, make it more relevant towards the 1 million to 10 million or 100 million range, and that would be a little bit more valuable. And any questions that you do have, make them very specific. Sometimes, we get very general questions that Ayman could probably spend 2 hours just, answering. So let's just be mindful of everybody's time here.
So I think we just did this, right? Where's everyone joining us from? Welcome and introductions. So I think, although this was what you were basically covering, maybe you want to just do like a quick high level overview here. You want to do it? You want me to do it?
Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, so as Olo graciously just mentioned, I was the former CEO of AppSumo. Over the last approximately 6 to 9 months, I've been focusing more on executive coaching, CEO coaching, and helping other 7-figure CEOs get to 8 figures and beyond. I'm also now a special advisor at AppSumo and helping them break into the $100 million revenue and beyond. We've obviously got Olo. Olo, you're currently going to be moderating this class. Head of revenue at AppSumo, running things, as you mentioned, since 2016, was my right-hand man for quite a bit of that. And so he's going to have a lot of behind-the-scenes questions and answers to a lot of things we're going to be covering today. Katie, I just want to give thanks to Katie. She was behind the scenes on a lot of this. She put together many of these, this presentation, and helped coordinate all of this, and is the reason that many of you are here right now. And she also manages the Plus subscription and SaaS community. So thank you to Katie for getting us here. So what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be talking about graduating from founder to CEO. And those are things that are very different. They're very different skill sets. And we're going to help you navigate that transition and help you get to that next level. And the way I equate it, it's sort of going from the player, you're the star MVP, you're all over the court, and now you are off the court. You are now the coach. You are navigating the plays that are required in order for us to win the game. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to cover 3 things in today's presentation. We're going to, number one, we're going to learn the common bottlenecks of growth. There's very repeatable common bottlenecks that I see over and over and over again around companies that hit that 7-figure mark. And we're going to help you identify what those bottlenecks are. More importantly, we're going to help you come up with some solutions in order to break through those bottlenecks. And the best part is we're going to come up with an action plan to get you from mid 7 figures to 10 million and beyond, and help you continue to repeat that to hopefully get you to 100 million and beyond. So before we get to that, who am I? Why the hell are y'all listening to me? My name is Ayman, husband, dog dad, very proud dog dad, but most importantly, what y'all know me for, CEO of AppSumo for the last 6 years. So when I came on, as Olo mentioned, we were doing about $3 million in revenue. Last year, we did north of $82 million. We were growing 80% year over year, so nearly doubling year over year, bootstrapped, which is, we didn't have endless piles of VC money to throw at growth. We had to reinvest all of our profits back into the growth in order to help us get to the next level. But what I'm most proud of over all the growth, over all of the numbers, is that we were voted the #1 best place to work, not just by Built in Austin, because quite frankly, who cares about them, but by the team, many of which have stayed with us for 4, 5, 6 years, that are still with us to this day. They showed that, you know, this was an awesome place to work, and that they felt like this is an area for them to grow. And in tech, where the average turnover is around 18 months, the fact that they stayed for 4, 5, 6 years, I think is a testament to the incredible company that we all built together. And that to me is actually the area that I feel like I'm most proud of. And so we'll help you walk through exactly how to help build something to help you get to that next level. So let's actually take a step back, 2015. Let's go a little further back and understand, where were we? So 2015, Noah hands me the keys to the kingdom. You know, I'd been a longtime fan of Noah, longtime fan of AppSumo. I actually have, if you go to my, Olo could probably look this up, my very first purchase in AppSumo was 2011. By the way, let's drop some in the comments. What is your first purchase? I want to see who, and we have any old school sumo links. What's your first purchase, and see if anyone can beat me. 2011, I believe it was April 2011. Drop that in the comments, your first purchase. And if bonus points if you remember what it was. So Noah hands me the keys to the kingdom. It's a 7-figure business. I'm super pumped. I even remember mentioning on the phone with Noah, like, I thought AppSumo, we got some 2015ers, 2016ers, nice. I remember on the phone with Noah and be like, I think AppSumo has a lot of meat left on the bone. And I got the job, came in, Anton helped train me up, did a phenomenal job of helping me get onboarded and all that. And I was excited. I was like, this is it. I made it. You know, we've got the dream. We've got a 7-figure business, fully remote, work from anywhere, do whatever, you know, build this incredible business and help take it to the next level. Well, reality was very different. This was literally me in a hotel lobby in Colombia, answering customer support tickets for 2 weeks during my entire vacation. I literally was like, I'm booking this vacation. I'm super excited. We get to work from anywhere. And instead, I was just answering customer support tickets and handling fire drills, and just realizing, like, there has to be a better way. We've got some 2013 or some 2011s. Awesome. We got some really old school sumolings here. How many people relate to this? How many people relate to feeling like, hey, like, I got into entrepreneurship, or I wanted to run a business because I didn't want to work a 9 to 5, and instead now I'm working a 24/7. Does anyone else relate to this? And so I realized, I was like, there has to be a better way. And so what do we do? What do we all do, right? We go to all the conferences. We read all of the books. How many people's bookshelf or Kindle looks like this? Like, literally, all I'm reading is all of the business books and figuring out what to do next. But the issue with that, the problem with that, is that we are drowning in information and starving for knowledge. We have no idea what to do. Do we do marketing first? Do we do sales first? Everyone tells me people is the answer. What do I do first? And it's kind of like baking a cake. You can know all of the ingredients, but if you get the order wrong, you're going to end up with a sloppy mess. So it's super important that you know the order. And that's what we're going to cover in today's presentation, is helping you figure out what are the right ingredients at the right time in order to scale from 7 to 8 figures. And so I went on that vision quest myself. I'm like, what does it take? What does it take to go from 7 to 8 figures? So I did that. I went on that vision quest.
Ayman, I have a question. Before, you were hired, Noah had, the task of finding that operator, right? So I think that's like the first step that, founders have to take. Was it difficult for Noah? I mean, because right now, affording you is a lot different than affording you 6 years ago.
Totally.
So what enticed you to leave, Microsoft and come to AppSumo?
Yeah, it's a great question. So at the time, and in fact, we'll cover that a little bit later in today's presentation. At the time, I had started 2 companies and sold them prior to joining Microsoft. I was working with Microsoft at the time, and I was going through my own decision of, do I go back into the entrepreneurship world, or do I join a company that's already doing 7 figures, avoid that 0 to 1 slog, and learn from somebody. And so at the time, it was almost like fate. Noah sent out a blast email saying, hey, we're hiring for someone for SumoMe at the time. And so I put in my hat for that ring. And when I jumped on a call with Noah, he's like, hey, that position's been filled, but we do have this other position because Anton and the entire company was moving over to focus on SumoMe, which became sumo.com. And we needed someone to run AppSumo. And I was like, that sounds like a dream because that's exactly what I've been looking for. And so it was almost like fate. But if, I know that that's something that's like more luck is involved in that. What I would suggest to anyone that's looking for an operator to sort of bring to the business is identify what is the one critical skill needed in order to drive the business forward and hire for that. And so for AppSumo, it was find, close incredible deals. If you can do those two things, we can train you to learn how to do the copy. We can train you how to do the other things. And so if you can figure out the must-haves, what is the one thing that's absolutely critical in order to drive the business forward, that's the thing that I would look for. And so we'll talk about that a little bit later in today's presentation. So the vision quest, right? So we're going into the vision quest. We're trying to figure out what does it take to go from 7 to 8 figures. And that's the issue. The issue is it's never been easier to start a company and it's never been harder to scale one. I mean, now you've got tools like Shopify, you've got WordPress, you've got Stripe integrations, things that we didn't even have 10 years ago in order to really get your business off the ground. But in order to go from 7 to 8 to 9 figures, that requires people, and people are irrational. Imagine doing a road trip as an individual versus a road trip with 30 of your best friends. Things get a little hairier. And so we'll walk you through how to get there. And the reason is that there's different phases at different stages of the company's growth. There's the startup phase, which is about $0 to $5 million. And that's really about product creation. How are you creating that product market fit that allows you to get a company to around $5 million in revenue? And then that's typically where the founder will stall out because they're doing everything. They're the bottleneck. And they need to bring something new in order to get to the next level, which is really the scale up phase, which is between 5 to 100 million. And that's really about company creation, people. And then the last is once you reach about 100 million, that's about legacy creation and protection and what it takes to get there. And what's really unique and interesting about these phases is that they tend to align with what we call the valleys of death. And the valleys of death is actually from Scaling Up. They analyzed millions of firms, and they realize that most companies get stuck at different stages. Like more than 96% of companies die before they ever make it to $1 million. And so if you're making north of $1 million, I want you to, first of all, congratulations. Like you've made it. You've made it to the top 4% of entrepreneurs. You've done a phenomenal job, and congratulations. And these are all monthly numbers. The next one is if you're making between 1 to 10 million, that's the next valley of death. And that's kind of where we're talking about right here, because that requires you to go from being a founder that's focused on product to a founder that's now focused on process, people, and performance. And that's really the next valley. And if you're making north of 10 million, less than 1%, less than 0.5% actually make it to this stage. And so if you're making north of $10 million annually, congratulations. I mean, this is the elite of the elite. This is the 1%ers of the 1%ers. And then if you're making north of 50 million, that's like not even 1% of 1%. Less than 17,000 firms in the world are doing north of $50 million in revenue. And so this is incredible. If you can make it to this stage, it's absolutely phenomenal. And we can walk you through with today's presentation how to navigate getting through each of these phases. So the reason that things stall out is the startup, the scale up, and the grow up phase all require different ingredients in order to get there. And they require a different type of CEO in order to bring, and that could be you, but you need to reinvent yourself as the CEO in order to get to that next level. And if we really break it down, this is a framework I created. It's called the 12 plateaus of progress, the 12 Ps, right? And these are the different elements that get introduced that stop you from breaking through to the next level. And they rear their ugly head at different revenue levels. Before we get into that, I want to just do a quick exercise. Could we look through this sentence, and I want you to count the number of F's that are in this sentence. All right, how many people got 3? How many people got 4? 5? There's actually 6 F's on this page. What is the word we missed? Of. And the reason I bring this up is that this is basic. Look at Olo's face.
Wow.
The reason I bring this up is this is basic, but basic is not easy. Okay? These are very different elements. And just because it's basic does not mean it's easy. And so when I look at these elements, right, the process, promotion, people, they are basic fundamental elements of growing a business, but they couldn't be farther from the truth of being easy. And if you're in this presentation, we're really going to be focusing on the things that allow you to get from 7 to 8 figures, because we're going to assume that, at least in this presentation, that you're already doing about north of 7 figures. And if you haven't, what I would recommend is focusing on the big 3, which is person, product, and promotion. That's 0 to 1. And honestly, I mean, Noah is the best in the world at this. And, you know, I'm sure we're going to do a future masterclass with Noah on helping you get to 0 to 1, is how do we make sure that you're getting an incredible product and promoting it and getting in front of those people at scale. And so we'll do that in future presentations. But even if you're not there yet, still, I think it'll still be valuable for you to know what are the things that will trip me up a year from now, 2 years from now, and how do I take notes and be aware of those things so that way I'm not running into those bottlenecks in the future. And so with that, we're going to be focusing on the next 3: process, people, and performance, the 3 things needed to go from 7 to 8 figures. And so the very first thing is process. And the reason I say process is because people always say people first. I say that's bullshit. It's not people first, it's process first. And the reason is because with process, if you don't understand how you make money, you can't figure out how do you backfill with people. And so this is actually AppSumo's way of making money. You know, close deals, we write copy, we send email, we make money. Cha-ching, right? And this is your most critical process. And it's shocking to me how many CEOs I meet with that don't understand how we turn their hustle into dollars in the bank. It's shocking how many people don't really understand the actual steps required in order to get to the next level. And your job is to then figure out what are those steps and how do I get myself out of there? And so when I first joined, this was literally what my week would look like. Monday, closing deals. Tuesday, I'd be writing copy, right? Wednesday, we'd send the email. Thursday, we'd get all this customer support tickets, so we'd be responding. And then Friday, we would be sourcing and figuring out what are the deals we're going to be closing in the future. And we'd send out a prospectus and all that. And this would be the ideal week. Of course, reality was very different, right? Close a deal on Monday, deal with a fire drill on Tuesday. You know, then we have to slam writing the copy and sending the email right at the final hour, 10 o'clock at night. Remember, Olo?
What's one of your most memorable fire drills?
Most memorable fire drill. That's a great question. I think that we would send one time we would flip deals live right as when we send out the email. And we sent out an email to our 1 million+ subscribers. And all of a sudden we started getting comments like, hey, this deal isn't working. Like I just purchased, it's not working. And we realized at the last minute that the partner had switched all of their redemption links. And so we literally had to scramble in order to get all of these things done. There's so many fire drills. I mean, it's across the board. And so, yeah, for those that don't know what a fire drill is, I mean, just think about like if there was a fire down the street and you have the fire department having to need to go and handle it. It's literally just an emergency. So dealing with emergencies, right? And so if you're running a 7-figure business, you're probably dealing with a lot of fire drills. You're probably dealing with a lot of emergencies. And your job at this level is really chief emergency officer. You're constantly dealing with all of these emergencies coming in and you're doing triage. Is this an emergency or is this not? Is this a cold or is this cancer? And you're always having to figure out, like, is this going to put us out of business or not? And being able to direct those things. And oftentimes you're the one jumping in and having to do the actual steps. And while it's necessary when you're first starting out, you eventually want to be getting out of that day to day. And we'll talk through how to get that. So we talk about process. Why do we want to process? Because if you can understand your process, you can automate it. You know, instead of sending out invoices, could you have people on a recurring payment, right? Instead of having an email marketing manager sending out one-off campaigns, could you have a year-long drip series like this is showing? Like if you can automate it, that's way better than if you were to hire. In fact, hiring is actually a sign of failure to automate, because a perfect business is a computer plugged into the wall that's running 24/7. If you could have a computer, this would be a perfect business, a single computer that literally serves all of its customers 24/7, 365. And so if you can automate, that should be step one of scaling from 7 to 8 figures. I think one of the questions we got is a SaaS, a subscription-based business going to be easier to scale than a service-based business? Absolutely, because a lot more of it is automated. And so if you can automate as much of your business as possible, it's going to be infinitely easier to scale than if you have 100 people working on that particular process. If you can't automate, you actually have to write out some SOPs. So what are the steps needed? Ola, do you remember this?
Yeah, I'm having
This
nightmares.
Yes, it's a nightmare. This is this is actually the steps required for us to send out an email for AppSumo. Literally every single individual step. And you can see here, like there's some really weird ones, like make sure there's not a weird symbol in the HTML. And like we'd have to double check that because that part wasn't automated. And so you can see the parts that were highlighted in red. It's because that was a fire drill. We sent out an email and we made that mistake. Double check all the links. And so if you can't automate it, you have to create that SOP. And it doesn't need to be too crazy. You can hire an intern and have them watch what you do or record a Loom video and have them write up the SOP. And so it not necessarily needs to be written by you. And the purpose being is like, you want this to be like a process. And if you think about like the machine, if you're building the machine before, SOP is standard operating procedure. So it's basically like a checklist, things to follow. So before, your job is like the engine. Most businesses really look like left. What you really want is your business to look like right. The goal is, there's a Warren Buffett saying, is that if aliens took over your business, no one should know for 6 months. And so if you've got those things automated and you've got a good process, then that's how you know you're creating a refined and polished machine. And so if the machine is the process, the people is the factory, right? And so how are you assembling the best team possible? So we've nailed the process down. Now we can worry about building and assembling the best team in order to backfill that process. And so the way you want to think about it, it's like, it's really about assembling your rock band. Like, who do you want to be in your rock band as you're touring the world and really enjoying life? And while you may have been the greatest one-man band on stage, eventually you're going to need to hire a vocalist, a guitarist, a drummer, and get yourself off the stage so that way you can be performing every single night. And so what does your rock band look like? How are you assembling them? How are you finding the best musicians, artists, creatives, operators, managers in order to create the world's greatest rock band for yourself? And this isn't just about writing a great job description and hoping for the best, but this is about treasure hunting. The best must be pursued. You have to go out and search for them. They're not people that will just come willing. I was working on Olo for over 2 years. He came out and visited me in Austin, and I was like, hey, a year from now, get ready. Olo, you remember that?
I remember.
I actually worked with Olo at a roofing company together, and he was the best salesperson there. And I remember I was like, when I'm hiring for a salesperson, I want to hire the best. And I kept Olo top of mind. We go way back. The best need to be pursued. When we were struggling looking for a Facebook ads person, we had gone through 3 or 4 agencies, 2 or 3 full-time people. None of them were working, and I just got frustrated. And I had some friends that worked at Facebook. I took one of them out to lunch, and I go, hey, bud, you work at Facebook. You have access to all the Facebook ads dashboards. Who's the best in the world? And he looked left, he looked right. He's like, all right, you didn't hear it from me, but there's this guy in California that's absolutely, I have no idea how he's getting these returns. And so what do? The very next day, I slid into his inbox. I'm like, hey, bud, heard you're the best in the world. Can we chat next week? This is how old this is. He gave me a Skype. Like this is how old this is, right? He gave me a Skype ID. We jump on a call. It's literally, this was April 28th, 2017. He's still doing Facebook ads for us to this day, 5 years later. And so these are the best in the world. They have to be pursued. You have to go out and find the best in the world and help them make sure that they're working for you. And getting the best in the world requires you to be on that constant treasure hunt. And then in addition to that, you have to know what you're looking for. These are 2 very different people. That picture looks, I was trying my best to anonymize it. These 2 people are very, very different, right? Their roles are very different. And you can't expect to have one person that's supposed to be very fast doing the position of someone very big that's supposed to be blocking, you know? And like Olo loves jumping on Zoom calls. He loves going to parties and mingling and doing business development. There are other people at the company that they're like, I don't want to talk to anyone. I want to be in a dark room and I want to write incredible copy. And if we were to swap roles and I would have given Olo that role, he would have left after a week and those people would have been constantly anxious and burnt out. And so you have to find the right people for the right role and figuring out, hey, how do I plug people on the right positions to get them in order to be successful? And the way that we do that internally, it's called the Moscow framework. This, by the way, this is a great framework. You should use this if you're searching for a house, if you're searching about the next city you want to live in, if you're searching for a spouse. What are your must-haves, right? What are your nice-to-haves? What are the could-haves? And then what are the won't-haves? That's really what it comes down to, because oftentimes when you're searching for a VA, for instance, you're like, oh, they got to do travel, they got to do all of these other things. And you got to like think about all of these other things. But really what's most important is I need them to do inbox management and I need them to manage my calendar. That's what's really a must-have. And it'd be nice to have if they could handle my travel. And so understanding the Moscow thing is really, really important. And so what do? We go back to the process. This is why we start with the process first. So now when we're hiring for the process, we understand what we're looking for. And so what was the very first full-time hire? Olo, closing deals, best in the world, right? Let's close incredible deals. Gru, he was our copywriter at the time. He's now our email marketing manager. He was working at a gym at the time, but I saw that he was writing some funny tweets and that was the must-have. I need you to be funny. AppSumo's copy is very funny. That was the must-have. I didn't care about 10 years of copywriting experience. We could train that, but you can't train funny. And so learning the AppSumo voice was the must-have. And he's now running an incredible copywriting team. Hiring an email marketing manager. And in fact, even before that was an ops manager. We hired Chelsea, jack of all trades, could do it all, absolutely phenomenal. And then an email marketing manager, Alona, who's the absolute beast. And she can literally do it everything. And so when we know the process and we plug it in with incredible people, we've got a little bit of automation, we've got incredible people, you can't help but print more money. And that's what we're here for, right? That's why we're on this presentation, is we want to print more money. And so when you do those two things, you can't help but print more money. And that's the thing, is you are one good hire from cutting your problems in half and two good hires from a completely different company. Many of the people that we hired end up recruiting and bringing some of their friends and some of their colleagues from previous jobs and helping the company become what it is today. And then what is your job, right? Everyone's doing a key part of the business. What is your responsibility? You are now the editor, right? You, like, if you were to think about like a New York Times editor, the New York Times editor is not writing any stories. They have 100 writers working for them, and they're walking around with a red pen, making sure that the voice is consistent. If you think about copy at AppSumo, it all sounds like it's coming from the same person. It's the AppSumo voice. Like, copy from Apple all looks like it was written by Steve Jobs himself, even to this day. And so your job is to create that consistent brand guidelines, understand what are the standards at the company, and that includes the people that you bring on. Are they the right writers? Are they New York Times material? And so that includes the standards, the processes, the operating principles. That's your job, is to walk around with red pen and go, that's not right. This is not the standards. This is not what AppSumo stands for. And you're constantly scratching things off and maintaining that standard for the business. And really, previously, when you're an individual contributor, your output is the output of yourself. Whereas this is an Andy Gross framework. Now your output is the output of the team. That's how you're measured. You are measured on the output of the team. This is one of my favorite stories from Bill Walsh, from one of my favorite books. The score takes care of itself. Bill Walsh took over the San Francisco 49ers when they were, I believe, doing 2-14 the year prior. And within just a few short years, he helped them become perennial Super Bowl winners. And when he joined his company, the 49ers, what do you think is the first thing he did? It wasn't him worrying about, hiring the right wide receiver or getting the right quarterback. He wrote a 3-page manual about how the secretary should be answering the phone. Think about that. Not worried about how we're going to win games. He worried about how are we answering the phone. a 3-page manual about just how to answer the phone. And that's like when you care about the details, we talk about being that editor. When you care about the details, the score takes care of itself, because he knew if the secretaries were answering the phone the right way, picking up within 3 minutes or 3 rings, then he knew that the receivers would run their routes at 7.1 yards, not 7.0, not 8.0, but 7.1. And so if you take care of the details, the score takes care of itself. All right, so we're bringing on people. What are some mistakes to avoid? Number one, not giving your cannons enough ammunition. So at any company, there's really only 2 types of people, right? There's the needle pushers and then there's the doers. This is a Keith Rabois framework. The cannons are those that are actually pushing the needle. They're driving the company forward, whereas the cannonballs help the cannons push that needle forward. And so what you need to do is first identify who are the cannons at the business and how do I give them as much resources, as much people, like let them go do their thing in order to deliver and drive the business forward. And the way you identify these cannons is like, they're typically like, they're already doing something and they keep asking for more. Alona is a great example of this. She joined as an email marketing manager. And then she's like, okay, well, like, I think we can like start a video production team. And so she started the video team. Then she's like, I think we can expand our email marketing team. So she like kept asking for more, and she kept being able to successfully juggle all of these plates. And so giving your cannons enough ammunition in order to really push the needle forward, I think is really critical in order to get a business from 7 to 8 figures, and helping align the doers under those needle pushers. Next is just thinking that been there, done that executives are just going to save your company. I see this all the time. People thinking like, okay, I'm at 7 figures, time to hire the been there, done that executive. And like most been there, done that executives have never really worked at a startup at 7 figures. You know, they expect someone to give them a laptop. They expect someone to give them their email. They expect like someone to give them two months of onboarding before they ever deliver an impact. And at this stage, you kind of need people that have sort of going to hit the ground running from the get-go. What's probably better is hire them as coaches to help advise the folks that are already at your company, because hiring those been there, done that executives, honestly, it's a very difficult process. It's expensive, and more often than times than not, it doesn't work the way that you expect it to. And so don't expect, or don't have your whole hiring plan just on those been there, done that executives. The next is thinking that micromanagement is a 4-letter word. Actually, I think sometimes you do need to be a micromanager. You know, oftentimes people are very afraid of micromanagement. I think this is actually a Andy Grove's framework, which is task relevant maturity. If someone is new to a task, you have to handhold them, walk them through that process, actually show them what you expect. But the goal is over time, you are slowly stepping away as they get more and more maturity with that particular task. And it's not about how long they've been with the company. It's how relevant, how much they know about the task that's important. Same with overruling and decisions. So if the consequences are high and your conviction is high, that's really when you should be vetoing. I see a lot of CEOs being afraid to step in and overruling because they're like, oh, that's their domain. I'm worried about that. But if the consequences are high and your conviction is high, you should step in and overrule. But if the consequences are low and your conviction is low, let them make mistakes. That's how you can help your people learn. And so understanding when you should be stepping in and when you should be letting go, I think is also really important. Same with, this is a Jeff Bezos framework. Is this a 2-door decision, right? Can we reverse it in the future? Don't worry about it. And if it's inconsequential, don't worry about it. But if it's got high consequences and it's not reversible, that's when you should be stepping in and really, and we'll have these recordings so you can go into these frameworks as needed. And that's really your job, is to help, is basically you're the parent of the company, and you are slowly stepping away. You kind of want them to all of the people working at the company to eventually go off to college. And at college, they're what? Maybe calling you every other day, maybe once a week, not that often, and you're not involved in the day-to-day. You know that they're handled, and your goal is, I have raised them enough that I can step away. And you know, if you feel like you're needing to constantly step in, even when they're off at college, then either the training or the onboarding or the expectation setting wasn't there, or you have the wrong person at the position. And that's the goal. The goal is, hey, we talked about that automation, right? It's a finely tuned factory, and you have a handful of people here just tweaking those automations and tweaking those things. And so the goal should be this, right? This very automated, very streamlined factory with a handful of people helping push the needle on that factory. And if you do those two things, that's it. Success, right? We're good. We have the process, we hired the people, or so I thought. The issue is when you just do those two things and you're not inspecting, you're not actually figuring out, am I getting the performance that I'm looking for? You have issues like this. So we hired a customer support person. We thought that they were handling customer support. All of a sudden, tickets started to blow up. They didn't want to raise the red flag. And I start seeing tweets, hey, why is no one responding to my customer support ticket? And I'm like, what's going on? I log in and I see thousands of unanswered tickets. And this isn't their fault. This is my fault. My fault was that I abdicated. I did not delegate. I did not step in and inspect what I respect. And so that's where it leads to the third step, which is performance. How are you measuring your processes and people to deliver the results that you're looking for? And this first step is recognizing that you have to learn how to manage your business with a true dashboard, and your P&L is not a dashboard. You know, you can't wait till mid-month, look at your P&L, scroll to your net income line, look at the thing, and if it's positive, you take a shot, and if it's negative, you take 2 shots. Like, this is not the way to run a business. It doesn't have your pipeline. It doesn't have your customer support tickets. It doesn't have your key performance indicators. It doesn't have all of the important things that are necessary in order to deliver the business. And it's important for you to make the dashboard easy, right? Like, this is I know we have an international crowd. I'm from the US. This is a cricket scoreboard. I have no idea what's going on here, right? A P&L is profit and loss statement. It's an income statement that tells you how you performed financially on the previous month, and typically over the last trailing 18 months. Tiff in the chat can tell you more about that. So this is a cricket dashboard, and I have if I was a star player on this team, I have no idea how to help the coach win. I have no clue. Olo, do you have any idea what to do here? And Olo loves sports, so he has no idea. Whereas if you have something simple, right? Like everybody knows. Everyone knows exactly what to do. It's a super simple scoreboard, right? Give Marshawn the rock and we can all go home, right? Super simple. You know exactly what to do in order to get to the next level. And then how many people have seen dashboards like this, right? You step into the cockpit and you're like, I have no idea how to fly this plane. I have no idea what to do here. And so your job is to make things as simple as possible. Complexity is the enemy of execution. If you can give your team 100 things to do, they'll do none of them. But if you give them one thing to do, they will do that thing very well. And so your job is to make it as simple as possible so they can sprint enthusiastically in the right direction. This is a J. Abram framework. Revenue, your annual revenue is really just 3 things. Number of customers times your average order value times your repurchase rate. You give me those 3 numbers, I can calculate your annual revenue from any company in the world, period. That's it. That's the only 3 numbers that you need. Number of customers, average order value, repurchase rate. If we want to make it even simpler, it's really just more better customers. If you want more revenue, you just got to get more better customers, right? More customers with higher CLV. Like, it's not that difficult, right? Why are we on this call? Like, just make more money. AOV is average order value, right? So every time someone checks out, how much are they, you know, that's kind of like when you go into a grocery store, it's the cart size. More better, baby. That's it. Right? So if you're in the cart, this is why when it's sneaky, right? You're in Publix or any supermarket, they have the gum and the candy and all these other things. You know what they're doing? They're trying to increase their average order value, the average cart size. And if you like that experience, you like shopping at Whole Foods, you're probably going to come back 2 or 3 times in a month or maybe every month. And so your repurchase rate is high. Whereas imagine you go to a grocery store and it was dirty, they didn't have high quality meats, and you're like, this is garbage, I'm never coming here again. Your repurchase rate is 1. And so when I can have high average order value, have a high average cart size, and I can get you to come back multiple times, that's how I get the revenue to come up. So that's it, more better customers. Presentation over, let's just do that, right? That's super simple. And that's the key, is like, let's make this dashboard super simple. It doesn't need to be very complicated, right? A few key metrics, everybody knows the score, everybody knows how to win. And Olo, what's that behind you? Y'all see this? Right behind you. Where the CEO focuses is where everybody looks. And so you can see here, I keep the dashboard here. This is the focus. Where the CEO looks, everybody looks. You have the entire company focus on the things that matter, right? And when you care about these things, the entire company cares about these things. And so you have to be very mindful. Those random Slack messages, instant focus shift. That email late at night, instant focus shift. Pick the things that matter and put the blinders on and stay focused on the things that matter and help you get to that next level. Keep it focused. This is a great example, right? Of how do you align vectors at a company, right? So like the GM is the CEO of a football team. What is their number one job? Make money. How do they decide how are they going to make money? They've decided two things. I'm going to win the Super Bowl and I'm going to fill the stands. And so I give those two goals to my key frontline leaders. Win the Super Bowl goes to the head coach of the football team. Pack the stands goes to my head of marketing. And then the head football coach then takes, how do we win the Super Bowl? Offense, defense, special teams. They break that down to their frontline leaders. And so this is how you break down goals and align vectors around a common goal around how do we make more money for this football team, right? Let's just keep breaking it down. And you can have the entire, it doesn't matter if you have a 1,000-person company or a 10,000-person company. If you can align the vectors, you can break through anything. Yes, keep the main thing the main thing. This is simple. This is basics. It's not that hard, right? I mean, it is hard, but it's basic. And it's an Elon Musk quote, right? Your progress is determined by the sum of all vectors. This is actually the inside of the very first Mac. If we were to go inside these inscriptions, this is the very first Mac, and he made every engineer sign it, even though the Mac was never meant to be disassembled. It was fully screwed and fully locked in. That's right, Catherine. It's simple, but not easy, very different. These are the inspections. These are the things that matter, right? And he made them all sign these things because his mentality was quality matters at Apple, even though he knew no one would ever see this. And so when you inspect what you respect, people will start to pay attention. And so if you're double checking the Facebook ads, you're double checking the customer support tickets, you're inspecting what you respect, all of a sudden everyone cares about this. In fact, when Steve Jobs on the tail end, they asked him, like, what product were you most proud of? Was it the iPod that was revolutionary? Was it the MacBook that was, or the iMac that just transformed the computer industry? He said, the thing that I was most proud of was the team that allowed us to accomplish those goals. The team that actually created those products was the thing that Steve Jobs, the most product-focused CEO that I've ever seen, this is the thing that he cared about the most, was the team. And so it's important you inspect what you respect. We talked a little bit earlier about what's cold versus cancer. I will say, just high level, the only thing that really will put you out of business is cash. You can recover from bad strategy, you can recover from a bad hire, but if you're not watching your cash like a hawk, that's the only thing that'll put you out of business. And so monitor it, make sure that you're constantly taking an eye on it. I think that's really important. Kobe, RIP, one of the greatest, I consider the greatest basketball player of all time. This is a story from Alex Stein. He was a youth basketball coach, and he got a chance to interact with Kobe. And he said that, hey, Kobe, do you mind if I watch one of your practices? And Kobe said, yeah, no problem. And so the very next morning, Alan showed up to practice and watched Kobe warm up, shoot some free throws, shoot some three-pointers, do a couple basic dribbling drills, and then towel off, warm up, and then the practice was over. And he ended up asking, Kobe walked over and he's like, hey, like, what did you think of practice? And he's like, hey, Kobe, like, no disrespect, but like, I was expecting 360 dunks and like fadeaway jumpers. And like, I was expecting something a lot more advanced for the last hour. I just watched you do the most basic drills, the things that I do with my 3-year-olds. Yeah, what's up? And Kobe looked at him and he's like, why do you think I'm the best basketball player in the world? Like, I don't get bored with the basics. That's what the whole purpose of today's presentation. Basic is not easy. Do not get bored with the basics. In fact, the greatest excellence, the greatest CEOs, the greatest athletes, if you look at them, all they have done is take the basics and push it to the limits of perfection. Whether it's the Elon Musks of the world, the Steve Jobs, the Jeff Bezos, the Ayman Al-Abdullahs, you like that? Threw my name in there, right? All we've done is take the basics and try to push them to the limits of excellence, the heights of excellence. And so that's really the whole purpose of today's presentation, is how do we help you understand what those basics are and help you push to that next level of excellence. And so let's put that all together. Day to day, this is what my life used to be: fire drills, How do we make money? How do we hustle more? Focusing on those day-to-days. And then your job is to eventually move to a lot more of the longer term, the 3-year vision, the 1-year goals, the quarterly goals, and getting those things approved. Who is our customer? Why do we exist? What's our purpose? That's where you should be living, is on the left-hand side of this dashboard, and getting out of the day-to-day. That's where most of you live. And in order to get to 8 figures and beyond, you want to continue to use process, people, and performance to get out of the day-to-day. And the way you know this is that if you can't manage your company from your phone, you're not delegating enough. If you can't go on vacation for 2 weeks and manage the entire business from your phone, you don't have the processes, people, and performance in place. And I hope that with this presentation, you really go deep into that. And so while my day-to-day looked like this, eventually it's focused more on this, the higher level things, the people. How are we recruiting and hiring the best people? The performance, the promotion, the process, the plan. Those are the things that really allow us to get to that next level. And that's your job as the captain of the ship, is steering us in the right direction, charting a course and making sure that everybody is rowing in the right direction. And so, as a recap, I hope we helped you identify those common bottlenecks, the process, people, and performance. I hope we gave you at least a high-level overview of how to overcome those bottlenecks and created an action plan to get you to 8 figures and beyond. And I know these things are basic, I know it, but it's what you learn after you know everything that changes your life. All right, y'all. Thanks, everyone.
Ayman, the tough part is I think the hiring, right? You spent a lot of time sourcing and finding the best candidates. At what point did you decide, okay, this needs to become automated, or this needs to be a second hire?
So similar to what we did with analyzing where are we spending our time. So the week-to-week basis of like, hey, I'm writing copy, I'm sending the emails, I'm closing deals. When you're analyzing your calendar, you have to constantly be analyzing your calendar and going, what of this can I automate? What of this can I processize? What of this can I hire for? And once you recognize that you're spending about 20 to 30% of your week on recruiting, which really most 7-figure CEOs should, I would argue you should be hiring a recruiter. A recruiter was our very seventh hire. When we're hiring 1 to 2 people a quarter, that's enough full-time work where you're sourcing, you're writing job descriptions, you're posting the job descriptions on a bunch of job boards, you're screening candidates, you're responding. It's a full-time position. And if you're the CEO and that's all you're doing, who's going to be worried about strategy? Who's going to be worried about all these other things? And so I would argue you should be hiring a recruiter a lot earlier than you think if growth is going to be on your game plan. And it doesn't need to be full-time, although it could be, like, I think one of the best hires is like someone you hire on an hourly basis, like pay someone on an hourly basis to do your basically a recruiting coordinator. They're like writing the job descriptions, posting them, responding to comments. If you can bring that in-house, I think that'd be phenomenal.
And how did you manage, for example, when I'm being reached out to by a CEO, I hold a lot more weight than than a LinkedIn message from a recruiter. So how did you keep up that high rate of response and excitement?
That's a great question. I gave my recruiter my LinkedIn. I gave her my password and I gave her the message, and I'm like, hey, we were recruiting for an engineering manager at the time. Here's what we're looking for. She would go out and she would add a bunch of recruiting managers as connections. And when the second they approved the connection, we would slide into the DMs. I mean, you got to just slide into the DMs. The best people they're already working at great jobs. They're getting proactive raises. They're not leaving. You have to go out and actively recruit them. And it just so happened that we were able to slide into some DMs and hire some incredible engineers because of it.
We have a good question here, which is, how do you hire good talent when good talent's always being poached by big companies with big offers? Which I think is a misconception that,
yeah,
there's a lot of, like, I guess, rough diamonds and,
Yeah. I'll tell you right now, if you're going against the Googles of the world, you're never going to win. They're not. Like, they're going to beat you every time on compensation, on perks, on benefits. Like, you're just not going to win. But your job as the CEO is not to find the person that wants a cushy FANG engineer job. Yeah, it's true. Like, there's a lot of people that, like, they are that's all they want, though. Like, they want basically a retirement community working at these larger companies. I know, I used to work at Microsoft, and like those type of candidates, quite frankly, are not the type of candidates that you're looking for you're looking for hustlers. You're looking for people that want to work at a startup, that know that they're not going to have an IT department to reach out to if their computer isn't working. It's a whole different culture. And so you want to first figure out like, hey, we're not recruiting against the candidates that want to go to the Googles of the world. We are going against candidates that want to work at a startup. That's number one. Number two is understanding the intangibles. So for us at AppSumo, we pitched it as, when you come to work at AppSumo, this is Entrepreneur Bootcamp. We launch 1,000 different companies. You get a chance to be a CEO of 1,000 different companies, see what works, see what doesn't, and you get a watchtower view of the industry. That's an intangible that the Googles of the world will never be able to compete on. The Facebooks of the world will never be able to compete on. And so what is the intangible at your company that you can sell? For us, the pitch was Entrepreneur Bootcamp. If you want to start a business in the future, this is the place to be. And I truly believe to this day, if you eventually want to start a business, you want to be working at AppSumo, because there's no better entrepreneur bootcamp in order to get to that next level. There's no culture that supports side hustles like AppSumo. And so for us, that was the pitch. It was why we're able to get incredible people like yourself, like Alona, like Chelsea, and early on, even when we couldn't pay them the big bucks. And eventually get to the point where the money comes in and we could start to pay them a little bit better. But in the beginning, you kind of have to pitch the intangibles and the hustle.
We have a similar theme here on a couple questions, which is, do you suffer a bit when you're, moving from chaos to organizing your processes, right? Or does revenue take a hit when you're kind of like stepping back from the money-making, I guess, day-to-day activities? And then how do you hire if you don't have enough cash to do it?
So your job as a CEO is essentially like an investor. You have to be allocating resources in a way that helps the business grow, right? And so like Kathy Woods versus Warren Buffett, they are investing their dollars in different ways. They're investing their time in different ways. And so when I analyzed how AppSumo was making money, I was spending a lot of time setting up the deals and writing HTML, and that was taking away from closing deals, which is actually what makes money. And so the very first hire that I made was actually an intern at UT Austin that I paid $15 an hour out of my own pocket. I Venmo'd them at the end of every week. So 10 hours is 150 bucks. It's not that much money for any 7-figure business. And so you don't need to hire full time. And that person loved checklists, loved spreadsheets. And so they went through and made sure that our deals were getting set up properly with a way higher attention to detail than myself. And with that extra day, I could then double down on closing more deals. And all of a sudden, because we were closing more deals, we couldn't help but make more money. And that allowed me to then open things up and bring on Olo full time to do that on a whole other basis. So to answer your question, is you're an investor, you don't need to invest a lot. And then when you do invest, that should have a direct correlation in bringing money. And if you're not, then you're investing in the wrong things. And so at least in the beginning, all of the investments should have a direct ROI if you're a bootstrap company.
All right, next question. What automation tools do you feel are a must-have?
The better question for you, Olo. What do you think?
I mean, it all depends on the process, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're like sales focused, right, you need to have like, your CRM and your email outreach tools. But if it's a lot of process internal, you need to have Zapier, email, whatever. But I think at least maybe for processes to begin is like Notion.
Yeah, I think that's a great all-in-one app.
Zapier. Yeah.
Notion, Zapier is a great stack to just get you started. I know that we've promoted a couple great alternatives in the past for both of them. So I think the high level to Olo's point is like, what is the thing you're trying to automate? Are you trying to automate sales automation? There's a bunch of sales automation tools. Just go to AppSumo and search or look in our sales category. Are you trying to automate project management? There's incredible project management tools. And so I think it's first understanding what is the process you're trying to automate. And there's a lot of software that's going to be specific to that particular process.
What gym did you find all these good hires? I tell people that it doesn't matter where they came from, Google versus gym, you have to train them regardless. Do you agree?
Sorry, what was that?
So one question is, what gym did you find all these good hires? It doesn't matter where they came from, Google or a gym, you have to train them regardless. Do you agree?
It's true, 100%. I think like Olo, you and I were meeting every single day for the first few weeks, right? And then we were meeting on a pretty regular basis for the first 6 months. Myself, right? I was meeting with Anton on a pretty regular basis. I don't care how good you are, you're going to need to be onboarded. You're going to need to be trained. And I think that your job is going to get harder before it gets easier. And you should expect that. But the goal is eventually those rhythms, those cycles, instead of meeting daily, you meet weekly, eventually meet bi-weekly. I think in the end, Olo, you and I were meeting on a bi-weekly basis, whereas before we were meeting 2-3 times a day, right? And so you do need to train people, right? Your job is the coach. What does the coach do but other than decide practices and make sure that your athletes are leveling up? And so 100%, no one's, if you know a hire that's going to hit the ground running on day one, I mean, you hit a unicorn, and unicorns are hard to come by.
Are there any qualities that you look for in I guess, these hustlers, right? That maybe stand out, like a common trait that you've noticed in these people that maybe, again, they don't have the background or the pedigree that, you know, you normally find in a candidate, but you find that hustle?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, to me, like when we're asking, I like to ask like questions around resourcefulness as part of the hiring process. Like, tell me a time when like you ran into a bottleneck or a roadblock in order to accomplish your goal, and what did you do in order to break through that? I think resourcefulness is really important at a startup, particularly a 7-figure startup. And so I think like being able to pull out some of the stories that exhibit that hustle, like for a salesperson, like tell me a time when you won a sale that the person said no to, right? For an engineer, tell me a time when you encountered a really tough problem or a tough bug, and like, what did you do to break through that? You know, I think like the more that you can start to ask those questions of resilience and resourcefulness, you will start to understand the individual and whether or not they just give up easily or they figure out another way. I give an example, like you want to hire people that if you were stuck in a third world country jail, that they would figure out a way to get you out. Like Olo, I know if I was stuck in a jail somewhere in the world, some third world country, he could get me out. Give him one call, somehow he'll figure it out. And those are the type of people you want to hire at your company, is people that can get you out of a third world country jail.
Love that. This is a good one because we did a couple of these, but never for hiring. What are your views on using personality assessments like MBTI? I'm not sure what that is, but I guess it's a personality assessment.
I love them. I think they're great. Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of these profiling ones. You just want to confirm that the legalities. I know in some districts and states, some countries, they don't require it. They consider it a form of discrimination. So just confirm that with your legal team. But I love them. I think they're great. I think the best way that I've done it has been like, who does this person remind me of in my own network? And that's an easy way to get like a high level, like I come from an accounting background. I know a lot of accountants that love checklists and love structure. And then I also have like a sales background. So like I know people that like are very outgoing and outspoken. And like if I can remember Anna, who's a great accountant, like does this person remind me of Anna or does this person remind me of Olo? And like sometimes you kind of just as a CEO need to be able to do it on the fly of like those like high level personality assessments. And would this person thrive with the personality required for this role?
Yeah, we never did these personality tests for hiring, but we did do them for team building. And it was very interesting because after you take that test and then you get everybody's answers and they have like different colors and then you read about, you know, about how they respond and how they're, you know, they react better, you kind of understand like, oh, this is why this person was frustrated with me. And maybe I should do this differently so they, you know, understand what I mean, or this person thinks that like I was being too blunt or I didn't care, but it's, you know, it was the personality thing. So I think it helps sometimes clear the air with, you know, issues that you might have in between the team.
100%.
Let's see here. Any must reads? You know, a lot of these frameworks came from Scaling Up and Retraction. Any other must reads?
We mentioned Andy Groves, so that's high output management. That's another phenomenal one. We mentioned The Score Takes Care of Itself. Honestly, if we were to go back to what was that slide that had all of the books? All of them, every one of them. Like you should you should be reading all of these books. These are all phenomenal, right? Like
take a screenshot.
Yeah, like as a CEO, like you kind of want to be treating your library, your bookshelf, like like a pharmaceutical department. What is the ailment that I'm dealing with today? And what is the prescription, the book that I need in order to solve it, right? So like we were dealing with product issues. And so I read Don't Make Me Think, you know, Noah recommended that one to me. We were dealing with branding issues. So we read Building a Story Brand. You know, and so understand like what are the issues that you're dealing with at the company, and then what is the number one book in order to solve that issue. Read it till the problem's solved and then move on. You don't have to finish the book.
I like this question that came in earlier, which was, what was the hardest period of scale and why? It's kind of, it's gonna have a trick answer.
The hardest period of scale and why? It's a great question. I think that, you know, we go back to the 12 plateaus. They all have different challenges at different levels. You know, so like the issue is that every one of these is going to be challenging, right? Like promotion, like we went through several marketing challenges where like before our only marketing channel was email. And then we got hit with a canned spam block where we couldn't send email for 6 months and like, sorry, 60 days. And like our revenue took a dive and we were freaking out. We're like realizing that we were too reliant on a single marketing channel, which is why we started on Facebook ads and the affiliate program. Our processes, if your processes get too rigid, it takes way too long to do things. And so you have to like constantly be scaling them back. Hiring, you hire the wrong people and like it's costly. You end up onboarding them and then having to remove them and train someone new is really difficult. Managing performance, especially when you have great people that aren't performing. So being able to manage them and helping them make sure that they get to the next level. Strategy, super difficult, right? How do you have 30 people at a company all bought into the strategy and the vision for the business, right? It's herding cats. And so that's the whole purpose of the plateaus, is like each of these steps is incredibly difficult. Profits, you get to a point where you have to start investing in things that don't necessarily directly translate to revenue, like HR, financial tools, payroll tools. Like these are all things that like don't necessarily directly ROI into the business. And so your profit will take a dip. And so how are you monitoring? Like if, like how many people here have cried over their P&L thinking you put the business you put yourself out of business? Like, you know, just me, I'm sure it's like, there's a bunch of people here, right? Like, so you have to like, honestly, each one of these steps is very stressful. It's very tough, but it's what's required in order to break through to the next level.
I think the interesting about that question though is that what was the hardest period of scale? It's kind of like asking, you know, what was your hardest day at the gym,
Yeah,
right? And it's like, well, each time should be the hardest, right? Like
that's a great
when you
analogy.
lifted 200 pounds, that was, you know, July last year, that was hard,
Yeah,
but you know, each time you should be you know, growing and scaling. So it should always
that's a
be,
great
you know,
analogy.
equally as
Yeah,
hard.
like what is the hardest part of scale? It's tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be tomorrow every single day. And you should love that process. Like, when are you going to stop going to the gym? Never. Like, you should enjoy it. If you're the CEO, you should be enjoying these challenges. And if you're not, then you're not the right person for the next phase of the business.
Uh, Question here. Two of the best conversations I've had on my podcast were Seth Godin and Noah Kagan. What is the biggest takeaway from Seth Godin's book, This is Marketing, and Noah's Playbook?
It's a great question. So for I'd say the best thing that I've learned for Noah has been like the velocity to the dollar. Like there's probably, like we mentioned earlier, like there's no one better than Noah to getting a company off the ground. I think I've seen him single-handedly launch a dozen 7-figure businesses. Like the guy's a machine. Like he literally just thinks an idea and it turns it into a business. And I think the reason being is that he has a really good framework about velocity to the dollar. And how do you take an idea and make sure that you have a paying customer as quickly as possible? Whereas like the majority of people end up doing the opposite. They spend six months to 6 years building something that no one ever ends up wanting. And so that's number one. Number two, in regards to Seth Godin, it's probably like just thinking different and being different. I think like AppSumo is an incredible brand. You know, it's a little bit irreverent. It's a little bit playful. It's so different than all of these other stuffy software companies that, you know, just think they're too self-important. And like when you're able to be different and really stand out in the crowd, it's the reason that we have such loyal brand affinity, is because people feel like AppSumo is a friend. And it's kind of weird that a company can be your friend, but it truly does feel like AppSumo is your buddy. It's your friend. You want to come to SumoCon. You want to hang out with the team. You want to hang out with Noah and the crew. And so I think that that's something that I think, like, if you can bring your personality into your business, I think that'll help you get to that next level.
Nice. Last question we have here is how would the employees, we don't even call them employees, we call them, you know, team members, but how would the employees describe the culture you brought to AppSumo?
Olo, take it away.
I mean, It's interesting because you know, for a while people joked and called us Camp Sumo, just because we used to all hang out after work, happy hours on the weekends. And it was just kind of it started out from what, hiring just people that had like-minded mentalities, right? The people that were resourceful, the people that can get you out of jail in you know, in a third world country, where we used to call the Helsinki test, right? Where,
Yeah.
you know, we used to have interviews where the entire team met the person and it was like, hey, if you could spend, you know, if you had to spend 12 hours in a layover in Helsinki with this person, like, would you be okay with that? And obviously, you know, as you scale that, you know, doesn't apply too much, but kind of like that mentality of having people with the same hustle, you know, having fun and enjoying where you work, um, is probably the key, you know, just make work enjoyable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think everyone here had like a very high caliber of excellence, but also love to have a good time. And I think that was a very that's a magic culture to be a part of, is that everyone enjoys hanging out with each other and they actually hang out outside of work, but they also have a very high bar of excellence and they all do their job and you can rely on them. And I think when you can cultivate that culture, that has, you know, high accountability, but also high fun, you know, our internal values are keep sumo hungry, humble, and weird. And I think that embodies the culture of AppSumo. We're all super hungry. We all have a team first mentality and we all like to keep it weird, keep it fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Eamon. And for everybody that's here that is a Plus member and has not joined the Sauce, please join the Sauce. It's a, you know, nice community forum on Tribe and AppSumo product where you can chat with fellow entrepreneurs on, you know, struggles or wins or any questions that you may have. Katie will be adding the recording to the Sauce. And don't forget to fill out the Zoom survey. We want to know what you think about these master classes, what would make it more valuable, who you want to hear from. And the next thing that we have coming up is with Neville. Neville was the original copywriter for AppSumo. He's kind of the one that created the voice that we have today. And he will be doing a masterclass on the art of copywriting. I think Katie added the link to that registration. And then last, again, if anybody is in the Spain area, we are having a private VIP event in Barcelona, June 7th, and it's exclusive to AppSumo partners and Plus members. So if you want to attend, send me an email, olman@appsumo.com, and I will get you your unique code so you can RSVP. Thank you so much, Ayman, and everybody else for attending.
Great. Thanks, y'all.